Who are you really? Not the name they call you, not the roles that hang from you like wet clothes, but underneath what does when it's 1 a.m. and the world forgets to look. Who are you when no one else is watching and the only voice in the room is yours? That voice, the one that narrates every failure, twists every quiet moment into proof, and never quite goes silent. That voice, that inner dialogue, is not just commentary, it's construction. It builds you frame by invisible frame, and the way it speaks decides who you think you are. Keep listening, because by the end, you'll understand why you still feel like a stranger to yourself, and why that's never meant you were lost, only unfinished. We spend most of our lives listening to ourselves, far more than we listen to other people. But the problem is, somewhere along the way, we stopped questioning where that inner narration came from. You didn't ask the voice to be this cruel. You didn't decide for it to say you're not enough. Yet it speaks, like it knows you better than you do. And sometimes it does. Because it was made from everything you couldn't say out loud. Every time someone misunderstood you, every time you swallowed pain, it kept score. It wrote the script. And when that silence builds up over years, the mind starts telling a story. Not about what happened, but what it meant. I wasn't loved because I wasn't lovable. They left because I'm too much. If I was really worth something, I'd be different by now. These lines feel like reflections, but they're not. They're scripts, rehearsed thousands of times until they become belief. That's why even when good things happen, they feel like glitches, like something that slipped past quality control. You feel warmth in someone's voice, and your inner dialogue whispers, "Don't trust this. It won't last." Someone compliments you, and the voice offers, if they really knew you, they wouldn't say that. You laugh with your friends, and seconds later it tells you how fake you're being. You're not broken. Your narrative is. And it didn't start with words. It started with feelings. Vague, stingy impressions that something was off. Maybe you were left out of conversations. Maybe your best didn't get noticed. Maybe their moods changed and no one explained why. You didn't have the logic, so your brain filled in the gaps with judgments about you. That's how self-perception begins. Not rationally, emotionally. When something hurt and you didn't know why, your mind said, "It must be me." It's strange how fast a narrative can become a home. Even an awful one. Even the story that says you're never good enough. There's comfort in the familiar. Painful stories still give you orientation. You may not like who you think you are, but at least it makes sense. You've repeated the same lines for so long, they start to feel like identity. I overthink everything. I'm not someone people stay with. I ruin things. No one told you that these thoughts weren't facts, and no one taught you that the story could be told differently. Every time you go quiet, the same dialogue returns, looping lines like old songs you never liked, but memorized anyway. And you wonder why change always feels temporary. It's because your narrative doesn't update. You can change jobs, styles, friends, locations, but if your internal monologue still says you're unworthy, every new chapter starts on the same page. Stay with this, because when you understand the voice, you start to change the listener inside you. The most dangerous stories don't scream. They whisper. Soft, believable things like, "You're too sensitive." You always find a way to mess it up. They come disguised as observations, not insults. That's why they slip past your defenses. That's why they don't feel like lies. They feel like realism. But realism can be shaped by repetition, and repetition is often trauma echoing. We think we're remembering things clearly, but memory isn't a mirror. It's a patchwork stitched together by emotion. The mind doesn't store facts, it stores meaning. And meaning is built by how that inner voice told the story. The breakup, the rejection, the silence, they were real. But the meanings were written by a version of you trying to survive it. Maybe 7 years ago. Maybe when you were 11. That voice doesn't grow older, even when you do. And so here you are. An adult with more freedom than you've ever had, still haunted by a script written back when you weren't allowed to talk back. That's why self-doubt feels so automatic. It's not logic. It's conditioned narration. It's emotional muscle memory, folding inwards every time you try to expand. We don't really ask, is this voice right? We ask, why does it feel so true? Because truth and familiarity get tangled, and your self-narrative has been speaking over your instincts for years. So long, you think they're the same. They're not. Your instincts ask questions. Your inner narrator pretends to know all the answers already. And this is why identity feels so slippery. Why do you feel fake, even when you're trying your best? Why do you sabotage closeness? Why do compliments bounce off you like rain on glass? Because they conflict with your inner script, and you can't believe what doesn't fit your story. Not easily, not quickly. You push it away, not because you want to, but because it threatens the only reality you've ever held as stable, the one where you're never quite enough. But what if your story didn't start with truth? What if it started with adaptation? What if the voice inside you about that learned to protect you by judging you first? If you already believed you were too much, then rejection hurt less. If you already assumed no one would stay, their leaving confirmed what you already knew. You called it insight. It was armor. Halfway through life, my or maybe half asleep at 4 a.m. That realization hits like static flooding into silence. This voice has not been helping you, it's been managing you. And management is not the same as compassion. You told yourself it was making you stronger, that being hard on yourself was honest, that if you weren't tough, you'd collapse. But toughness without warmth becomes cruelty, especially when it's turned inward. But there's something else too. Not just pain, control. You learned that if you told your own flaws before anyone else could, you'd stay in control of the narrative. If you judged yourself first, no one could take you by surprise. That voice isn't just harsh, it's strategic. And admitting that hurts. Because it means you didn't just internalize judgment. You weaponized it against yourself. Also that you'd never have to feel the sting of someone else doing it worse. You became the storm before anyone else could rain on you. It worked. Kind of. You survived. But now you're not just surviving anymore, are you? Now you're tired. And that voice no longer feels like preparedness. It feels like grief on repeat. And we have to grieve sometimes. The version of us we believe that we were. The neurotic one. The awkward one. The one who always ruins things. We grieve them not because they're dead, but because they were never real. They were just explained pain. And it's terrifying to live without that familiar inner narration. If you're not the one who overthinks every text, who are you? If you're not the person everyone eventually grows tired of, how do you even act at a party? If you're not the fixer, the quiet one, the anxious mess, then who do you become? The problem isn't a lack of identity. It's the space that opens once old identities stop ruling over you, a space with too much quiet. But stay in that quiet. Sit in it. Because that silence is the only place a new voice can enter. One that doesn't correct you. One that actually listens. Sometimes it sounds like curiosity, and sometimes it barely speaks. It doesn't label. It asks. What do I need right now? What if I'm not the villain? What if I'm not broken? Just learning. Those questions once sounded like weakness. Now they sound like breathing for the first time. And when we ask different questions, we write different stories. Not instantly, but piece by piece. The words shift. The judgments loosen. The storms that once felt permanent pass through us without settling. You don't have to love yourself loudly. You don't have to correct every insult the voice throws at you. Sometimes, all that's needed is to step outside the story for a breath. To catch the moment the voice speaks and ask softly, who taught me this? Because once you ask that, you begin to see which parts of your self-image never belonged to you, which lines were inherited, which ones were echoes, and which ones are finally ready to be retired. The mind will resist at first. Even self-hate defends itself when it's all you've ever known. But keep asking. Keep watching that voice the way you'd watch a storm from the safety of a window. Let it pass. And notice how much of your life has been scripted in abbreviations of fear. It's not easy. Some days the voice will shout louder, desperate to reassert its role as narrator. Especially when you try something new, when you take space. When someone sees you and your old narrative panics, this isn't you, you're faking. But that panic is just transformation in disguise. It means something is shifting. There's nothing wrong with having a voice inside. That voice is human. What matters is how much power we let it hold. Whether we let it guide or govern, whether we repeat it or rewrite it. Your identity isn't what you tell others. It's what your mind tells you when no one's around. But identity isn't final. It's fluid. Not fake, fluid. Like water that takes the shape of whatever cup it's poured into. You've changed cups. It's time your story changed with you. You're not a list of thoughts. You're not your worst day captured on a loop. You are how you treat yourself when no one responds to your message. You are how you speak internally after you fail. You are whether that voice says, of course this happened, or you're still worthy, even now. And most of all, you are not every sentence spinning in your head. You are the one who hears them. You are the one who holds the pen, even if your hand still trembles. That changes everything. Because if you're the narrator, not just the narration, the story can still evolve. And maybe that's the only truth that matters right now. You are not wrong. You were just rehearsing the lines that kept you safe. And it's okay to forget the script. Let it blur. Let the voice speak. But let it speak alongside curiosity. Let it echo, then soften. Until what's left is not a perfect story, but a quieter place to be seen.